Hello, my name is Kate from Cheshire East Libraries, and I'd like to tell you about a book I love. My book is Bookworm, and it's by Lucy Mangan, and it was published by Vintage in 2018. Now, as the cover or the subtitle says, it is a memoir of childhood reading, and I found it to be really funny, informative and nostalgic. Now, this is a book that can be read in one sitting or just as well dipped in and out of over a period of time, which is what I tended to do because I was reading other books at the same time. It's definitely not just a list of books, but it's also about her childhood and in particular her reading habits and how and when she came across different books. But it does have, in a very useful way, at the end, there's a sort of summary of all the books over about 12 pages. She has a list of all the books that she mentions within this book and which chapter they're mentioned in, so you can go back and read about them. I found that there are many laugh out loud moments in this book, as well as very quotable sections, and they're not necessarily directly relating to books. Here's one that I liked. Catherine Storr's Lucy and Lucy Runs Away, which sparked a lifelong commitment to always having a running away fund and a running away bag. My first was a matter of 5p pieces in a china toadstool and Victoria plum satchel filled with panda pops stashed under the bed. Now it is 3 ices and an ASOS rucksack filled with cash, and I advise all women to keep a similar set of provisions handy. Now, she tells us that she has over 10,000 books, and in relation to this, she says, I was once interviewed by a man from a book collecting magazine because he refused to believe that I had 10,000 books in my house that were all merely, in the parlance of the trade, reading copies. He came, he saw, he left. He wrote that it looked like I had a jumble sale hoisted on my walls. I was hurt on my book's behalf, but couldn't argue. Like me, Lucy was reduced at breakfast time to reading cornflake packets because books were either not available or not allowed at the breakfast table. Also, I am rather jealous of her because she has actually met the real Teddy Robinson and his friend Deborah, the child Deborah in the books, who is now in her 60s and living in Hampstead. So we learn a lot about her childhood reading habits, as well as lots of other aspects of her childhood, in particular about her parents and her sister and their characteristics. I have no doubt that many of them are hugely exaggerated or even totally untrue. We learn through the book of how she developed as a person through her reading. And in the case of a book called End of Term by Antonia Forrest, which I think is out of print now, how she links the plot and characters to her growing thoughts and beliefs, and that she felt so much better when she saw herself reflected in books. She talks a lot about reading instead of living, but also about how it's possible to live so many different lives through reading. She makes herself out to be a completely organised, antisocial and rather uptight bookworm. And talking of a childhood friend, she says of this friend, we are very alike. We both like to stay in, wear 3 jumpers at all times, watch telly, not talk and sleep a lot. Our only real difference is that I also like to read, and she prefers to put on a 4th jumper and another DVD instead. You can imagine that Lucy would actually love these lockdowns because she does at one point say that she never understood the agony of the book Papillon because to her solitary confinement isn't any sort of a punishment. So why do I love this book and why would I recommend it? I think it is a very nostalgic book, but without being sentimental. And Lucy can be quite critical of some authors, their books, and even some of their characters. One in particular, she hated the character of Beth in Little Women, but in return she gives us a lovely description of Louisa May Alcott's family life and her background. The book made me very aware of a number of books that I'd missed out on during childhood. I've never read The Phantom Tollbooth. I did by my children, but I never read when I was younger, Where the Wild Things Are. And there's another book called Private Keep Out that I quite like to read. But it means now I want to catch up on these books if they're not out of print. It also served to remind me of some books that I'd read during my childhood and loved at the time, but then totally forgotten. One of those books is The Saturdays by Elizabeth Enright. And that makes me want to reread it. Luckily, like Lucy, I've kept all my favourite children's books, so I can do that. So I would highly recommend this book to absolutely everybody, whether you were an avid reader already as a child, or whether you came to reading maybe a bit later in life and you need to catch up, whether you're a parent of young children now, or you just love books generally. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you might think about reading the book, and do look out for further videos from Cheshire East Libraries. Thank you. Bye-bye.